While the federal government was busy hyping up its budget, trying their hardest to convince you that our economy is the best of the developed countries, in what can only be seen as bizarre, they stuck to that line despite the $1 trillion bailout of the European banking system. It made CEC leader and federal candidate for Wills, Craig Isherwood, ask, "What's crazier? Kevin Rudd's line that the crisis is over just as the meltdown escalates, or Europe's return to 1923 Weimar Germany scale money printing as their solution to that meltdown?" We are on the edge of a hyperinflationary explosion of the world's financial system. If a global Glass Steagall policy is not adopted by nations now, beginning with the United States, you will see the level of the world's population drop from 6.8 billion people to less than 2 billion people. In other words, kiss your ass goodbye. Are you still believing the lie that Australia's economy is the best of the developed countries? Our economy has been supposedly booming because of our housing market. After falling 6% between 2008 and 2009, median property prices in Australia have skyrocketed 12% in 1 year. Why the big price rise? Foreclosed homes are deliberately being kept vacant. According to Earth-Sharing Australia's I Want to Live Here 2009 Vacancies in Melbourne report, based on a very comprehensive survey of 652,700 properties across 23 different councils in Melbourne, there are 44,800 vacant properties across Melbourne's inner, western and southeastern suburbs. That is a genuine vacancy rate of 1 in 15 properties, or 6.9%, more than half of which are residential houses. The report states that most of the properties are kept empty for speculative reasons. In other words, to help drive the prices up. Now, while 40% of homeowners are enduring mortgage stress, more than 90,000 new Victorian homeowners are on the brink of being kicked out of their homes as they struggle to cope with interest rate rises. But those interest rate increases are welcomed by the government because it's the major way we can attract the foreign capital required to keep our banks liquid, because they're carrying over $800 billion in foreign debt, which includes $440 billion in short-term 90-day debt. Australia, like Brazil, has been a looting ground to channel money into the inter-alpha group of banks through carry trades, where low-interest central bank credit is borrowed by banks at 0 to 1% in Europe or America, and on-lent to their higher interest economies, such as Brazil and Australia. Consequently, Brazil and Australia have similar economic patterns. Brazilian credit grew 47% last year, which fed a massive rise in property prices, as seen in Australia. Rio de Janeiro property prices jumped 50% in 12 months. Brazilian interest rates are on a steep rise, and last week you had a 0.75% rise. Next time it's expected to be 1%, because it's the only way to keep attracting the new carry trade investment, to keep rolling over the older unpayable debts, exactly like Australia. What's a carry trade, you're probably asking? Well, take the case of the Brazilian soccer player Ronaldo. In April 2008, Ronaldo found himself embroiled in a sex scandal. It turns out that Ronaldo, having dropped off his girlfriend at her house in Rio de Janeiro, proceeded to pick up 3 prostitutes. But when they all booked into a hotel, Ronaldo discovered that the 3 girls were actually 3 guys. Ronaldo later told police that the 3 transvestites tried to extort money from him, led by Andrea Albertine, otherwise known as Andre Luiz Ribeiro Albertino. The Brazilian carry trade and Australia's economic growth, like Andrea, ain't what she appears to be. And while we're on the subject of areas of the world that ain't what they appear to be, let's look at Europe. Europe is not experiencing a Greek crisis, nor a crisis of the so-called pigs nations, that's Portugal, Ireland, Italy, Greece and Spain. Europe is the centre of the continuing breakdown of the world financial system, which began in July 2007, as Lyndon LaRouche forecast. A $110 billion euro bailout of Greece did not work, so the British threw a wall of money at the problem, intending to bankrupt all of Europe and the United States, and unleash hyperinflation as in 1923 Weimar Germany, but this time on a world scale. This included $1 trillion from the European Central Bank and IMF, and the promise of unlimited funds from the US Federal Reserve. If the people of Europe are forced to pay with their lives for this bailout, it won't just be the European economies that will go down. As LaRouche warned in an address to a gathering of CEC activists on Saturday, May 1st.
You have, in Russia, a rather desperate situation. The lack of development of industry. The Russian nation has actually scientific and related skills, which they are not using. China is progressing nicely in its own terms, but if the United States and Western Europe go down, as they may go down within the current weeks, then the situation of Russia and China and India will become hopeless. Because if the transatlantic section of the world economy goes down, which is what's threatened right now, then the world as a whole cannot be supported. No matter what is done that's good in Russia, or what's done that's good in China economically, or what's done in India, these countries cannot sustain themselves independently of some kind of development of the rest of the world. And that would mean that the Pacific Rim area of the Western Pacific Rim also becomes threatened by a breakdown of the same type which originates now, admittedly, in the transatlantic region. And that's where we stand.
You have a choice. Either kiss your ass goodbye or fight for a global Glass Steagall policy. What the hell is a Glass Steagall policy? Glass Steagall refers to the Banking Act of 1933, signed by US President Franklin Roosevelt, which was fought for in the US Congress by Senator Carter Glass and Representative Henry Steagall. Simply, the policy will wipe out all the worthless gambling debts in the global financial system, such as derivatives and mortgage-backed securities. Anything that doesn't conform to what should be protected because it represents a legitimate asset to society. Under Glass Steagall, commercial banks and investment banks will become separate entities. As President Franklin Roosevelt said to J.P. Morgan, you can be an investment bank or a commercial bank, but you can't be both. This policy is now up for a fight in the United States Senate, where Senator John McCain, a Republican, and Senator Maria Cantwell, a Democrat, have proposed a Glass Steagall amendment to a bill by Senator Chris Dodd. The LaRouche Political Action Committee and 3 LaRouche Democrat congressional candidates, Keisha Rogers, Rachel Brown, and Summer Shields, are leading the mobilization to ram this through the Senate. Senator Cantwell is confident that she has the votes to pass the amendment, but this runs against the wishes of the British, whose foreign ministry would consider it an act of aggression. The British puppets, President Obama, Treasury Secretary Tim Geithner, and the man who pushed for the repeal of Glass-Steagall in 1999, Larry Summers, may try to pull off some dirty tricks to stop it. But don't think that you can just sit back and twiddle your thumbs, watching what happens in the US. Listen to and act upon the ideas discussed by LaRouche, who is the only economist on the planet who knows what to do. In his address on May 1st, he proved that to be true, and then looked at Australia's place in this process.
Only the United States, with its history, has the specific kinds of law which can be quickly brought out of the closet for this purpose of global organization. Our Constitution, which is not a European Constitution, our law is founded, our Constitution is founded, has no resemblance to the typical laws of Europe, which are actually so-called parliamentary systems. And parliamentary systems are actually an outgrowth of imperialism, with some effort to make some improvements or make imperialism more tolerable, imperialism being essentially monetarist imperialism. So Europe requires a role to be freed of the euro, but without getting out of the euro, there's no hope for continental Europe. None. No recovery is possible. They have to get out of the euro anyway. They have to restore a system of sovereign nation states under a fixed exchange rate for the world and under a Glass-Steagall standard for cleaning up this mess we call the banking system. The present banking system of the world is so bankrupt at present, with so much toilet paper in there, really not negotiable, that it would be impossible to restart the world economy in any normal form, as long as that toilet paper is jamming up the works of the economy. Therefore, you require two things. First of all, you require a Glass-Steagall reform. That is like the U.S. Glass-Steagall reform of Franklin Roosevelt. You need also not only that kind of reform in each and every country to just throw away this these illegitimate financial claims, which are based on fraudulent methods. But you also need a reform of a financial system which will meet the needs of the world for development. And that means you need a combination of a Glass-Steagall reform extended to a global form, which then reorganizes the way in which the world works to eliminate these fraudulent kinds of things and go back to what we would consider a solid, competent banking system, which then has to operate, as Roosevelt specified, on an international fixed exchange rate system. That only in that way, with a fixed exchange rate system and with a Glass-Steagall controlled type of banking system, can you utter credit at the approximately 2% in international markets, 2% per annum, needed to start a general recovery of the world economy. This all requires, first of all, global large-scale infrastructure development, transportation, power, sanitation, water, and also building the basis for agricultural systems. Because otherwise, without that development, we do not have an adequate food supply for a population which is now running towards 6.7 billion people. So this is our general operation. As I said before, this is not something which you're going to get rich quickly, but there's a difference between living and dying, and that's the difference. If we make this kind of reform, civilization will live. If we don't make this kind of reform, civilization will die. And I think that Australia has a very significant place in the process of this revival. Some of the things are obvious to you from, what the assets are of Australia and how these assets would fit into this kind of program. You know some of the things that were not done in Australia, which should have been done, which under these kinds of circumstances, such as the Snowy River and so forth, could be done still, which would be the beginning of some very important improvements in the productive powers of labor and conditions of life in Australia. So why not do it? Why not have a great time? We're not going to get that rich all of a sudden, but you're going to have a good life with a sense that your children's generation have something meaning waiting for them and down, say, 2 generations down the line, and a constant improvement in the conditions of life in the meantime.
So, what are you waiting for? Join the Citizens Electoral Council. Become a member and make a large contribution through our website. And get involved. Organise your fellow citizens for a Global Glass Steagall. Or you just might have to kiss your arse goodbye.